Welcome to a special Super Smash edition of Sundry Weekend News. We begin with Cowboys Wire. 2021 mock draft sends Cowboys replacements for Jarwin, Clinton Dix. The dust has settled from the 2020 NFL draft, but being the NFL is in recess, why not skip right over the 2020 season and do a mock draft for 2021? Just because you're bored. SportsWire. Follow your favorite teams and discover the biggest stories first on App Store and Google Play. Despite insider report, NFL owners not waiting on Jerry Jones to speak out. So stop bugging the poor guy. With every passing hour of silence from the big office at the Star in Frisco, the message being relayed only grows louder. Blah, 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 blah. Richard Sherman calls out Jerry Jones. Des Bryant defends Cowboys owner. I've already read that. Coaches know best from Amway and USA Today. Check the rankings. Cowboys news. Tyron's final star season. Best and worst of Dallas's offseason. Around this time of every year, global panic or not, the league gets a little quiet. Players and coaches alike plan on those last vacations before heading off to training camp. Tyron Smith, huh? You can help end Alzheimer's disease. Donate now to Alzheimer's Association. More headlines. Dorrance Armstrong needs to blossom in pivotal third year. I don't even know that name. What does he do? Cowboys news. Randy Gregory's Rocky Road. I already read about that. Cowboys news. Van Der Esch, Jalen, Connor Williams need to step up. Yeah. Defense is very important. Long game. Luchasaurus spans eras of coaches, holders, kickers, punters. Yeah. How old is he? Cowboys news. Hall of Fame game versus Steelers in doubt. Dak Emmett want end to qualified immunity. What does that have to do with... What does one thing have to do with the other? And Dallas Cowboys face masks. Okie dokie. Moving on to the Daily Wire. Who's really behind the riots? Watch here. The state of Texas delivers a simple message to rioters thinking about trashing the Alamo. We can read that. Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush, the eldest son of former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, delivered a simple message for rioters who might be thinking about trashing the Alamo. Don't mess with the Alamo. Bush released a statement on Saturday evening after social media posts claimed that so-called protesters were wanting to take down the Alamo, which comes as violent rioters have trashed inner cities across the country and have destroyed historical monuments and statues in recent days. Yeah. Even statues of people who should have been celebrating with their cause, but their cause isn't really what you think it is. Bush released a statement on Saturday evening after social media posts claimed that so-called... Oh, wait, I already read that. Recent days. One social media post that went viral online came from lawyer Robert Barnes, who wrote... Yeah? Where's your bottle? Protesters in San Antonio now demanding tearing down the Alamo. The tweet had nearly 9,000 retweets several hours after it was posted. But they're just peaceful protesters, right? Bush released a statement late on Saturday saying, "The Alamo is the shrine of Texas liberty, and it will be defended. My office is closely watching the social media posts and rumors from protesters who are threatening to come to the Alamo." Hey. Rest assured, we have already deployed for several weeks and will continue to do so the Alamo Rangers in partnership with SAPD, the Department of Public Safety, and the National Guard to protect this sacred site, Bush continued. My message to the protesters is simple. Don't mess with the Alamo. The riots and destruction of property came in response to the death of George Floyd a couple weeks ago in Minneapolis. I don't have to read about that. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Wait. The owner of a manufacturing company in Minneapolis that was burned to the ground during last week's violent riots has announced that he is relocating his company, taking dozens of jobs out of the city due to the failure of the city's Democrat leaders to protect businesses. Good for him. They don't care about my business, Chris Weyerbeck, president and owner of Seven Sigma Inc., told the Star Tribune. They didn't protect our people. We were all on our own. Weyerbeck told the newspaper that it was too late to change his mind about moving his businesses out of the city, and that he never in his wildest nightmare would have thought about moving prior to the riots. Oh, where'd it go? Hello? Okay, moving on. Atlanta police chief resigns after police fatally shoot man outside drive-thru. I believe that was a man who was fighting back, and you fuckers made a woman police chief resign. So good job with the whole equality thing, the whole diversity thing, that is. Watch. Filmmaker tells Black Lives Matter protest statistics about police shootings, gets told to fuck off. That's not surprising, because that's not what they want to hear. Complete incompetence. CNN's Chris Cuomo uses Obama-era stats to attack Trump economy. Prager, the Four Horsemen of America's Apocalypse. I like Dennis Prager. I don't know if I want to read about that, though. Help for homeowners with old roofs. Do this. This is how homeowners are getting new energy-efficient roofs without breaking the bank. From SimpleHomeQuote.com. Ben's latest op-ed. With the death of George Floyd, a heinous atrocity virtually every American decries. Unity should have prevailed. Americans hate police brutality. Americans care about Black lives. Yeah. There's a bunch of ads. Okay, I'll see what this says. It takes a lot to build a civilization. And though it is much easier to destroy a civilization, it takes a lot to do that too. But now we have 4 roots of evil that are guaranteed to do so. Number 1, victimhood. The first is victimhood. The more people who regard themselves as victims, as individuals or as a group, the more likely they are to commit evil. People who think of themselves as victims feel that, having been victimized, they are no longer bound by normal moral conventions, especially the moral conventions of their alleged or real oppressors. Everyone knows this is true, but few confront this truth. Every parent, for example, knows that the child who thinks of him or herself as a perpetual victim is the child most likely to cause and get into trouble. And criminologists report that nearly every murderer in prison thinks of himself as a victim. On a societal scale, the same holds true, and being on such a larger scale, the chances of real evil ensuing are exponentially increased. One of the most obvious examples is Germany after World War I. Most Germans regarded themselves as victims of the Treaty of Versailles, of a stab-in-the-back German government, of the British, Americans, and French, and, of course, of the Jews. This sense of victimhood was one of the most important factors in the popularity of the Nazis, who promised to restore German dignity. That millions of Black Americans regard themselves as victims, probably more so today than at any time in the past 50 years, can only lead to disaster for America generally, and for Blacks specifically. While victims generally feel free to lash out at others, they also go through life angry and unhappy. Number 2, demonization. The second of the 4 ingredients of this civilization-destroying witch's brew is demonization, demonizing a group as inherently evil. That is being done now with regard to the white people of America. All whites are declared racist. The only difference among them is that some admit it and some deny it. The notion that whites are inherently evil has long been associated with Louis Farrakhan, but it has apparently migrated out from his relatively small following to many Blacks, even those who might consider Farrakhan a kook. Former President Barack Obama, hardly a Farrakhan follower, described America as having racism in its DNA. That is as close to inherently and irredeemably evil as it gets. You cannot change your DNA. In that sense, not only are whites demonized, but America is too. Unlike traditional liberals, the left regards America as a moral cesspool, not only racist, but, according to the New York Times, founded to be so. The New York Times has created a history of America that declares its founding not in 1776, but in 1619, when the first black slaves arrived. The American Revolution was fought, according to this malign narrative, not merely for American independence, but in order to preserve slavery, a practice the British would have interfered with. This history will now be taught in thousands of American schools. The combination of victimhood and demonization alone is dangerous enough, but there are still two more horsemen galloping toward the looming apocalypse. Number 3, a cause to believe in. Most Americans throughout American history, found great meaning in being American and in being religious, usually Christian. Since World War II, we have lived in a post-Christian, post-nationalist age. Until very recently, Americans would have found the expression for God and country deeply meaningful. That term today on the left is risible and execrable. But people need something to believe in. Risible. Is it risible? But people need something to believe in. The need for meaning is the greatest human need after the need for food. Leftism, with all its offshoots, feminism, environmentalism, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, has filled that vacuum. In Europe, communism, fascism, and Nazism filled the hole left by the demise of nationalism and Christianity. Here it is leftism and its offshoots. Number 4, lies. The fourth and most important ingredient necessary for evil is lies. Lies are the root of evil. Ironically, slavery itself was made possible only because of the lie that the black was inferior to the white. Nazism was made possible thanks to the lie that Jews were not fully human. And communism was built on lies. Lenin, the father of Soviet communism, named the Soviet communist newspaper Truth, Pravda, because truth was what the Communist Party said it was. The New York Times, CNN, and the rest of the mainstream news media are becoming our version of Pravda. Objective truth doesn't exist on the left. The universities have already declared objective truth as essentially an expression of white privilege. See what happens to a student who says in class, for example, that men cannot give birth. The public self-debasement demanded of anyone who differs with the left, like New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees just did when he said not standing for the national anthem desecrated the flag and those who have died for it, happens almost daily. The only difference between this and what dissidents underwent during Mao's Cultural Revolution is that the self-debasement here is voluntary, thus far. Last week, when this Jew saw a store in Santa Monica with a sign reading black-owned business so as to avoid being destroyed, it evoked chilling memories. That's how bad it is in America today. Dennis Prager is a nationally syndicated radio talk show host and columnist. His latest book, published by Regnery in May 2019, is The Rational Bible, a commentary on the book of Genesis. His film, No Safe Spaces, came to theaters fall 2019. He is the founder of Prager University and may be contacted at dennisprager.com. Here we have the Daily Shapiro from yesterday. Minneapolis City Council unanimously passes resolution to replace police department with community-led public safety system. Because that's going to go well. Jussie Smollett loses bid to have disorderly conduct charges dropped. Ha! Anonymous letter from purported UC Berkeley professor harshly challenges Black Lives Matter narrative. Interesting. Let's see what it says. On Thursday, the editor of the website uncoverdc.com decided to post an anonymous letter from a purported professor at that bastion of leftism, the University of California, Berkeley, that challenged the BLM, Black Lives Matter narrative. The editor, Tracy Beans, wrote, "I was sent this and felt the need to share it to a wider audience on Twitter. I shared a link to the original post in the tweet. Then the post was removed, and I made the decision that this is an important perspective not given an equal share in the marketplace of ideas. It is for this reason..." Excuse me. It is for this reason that Uncover DC now publishes it, not only because it is newsworthy, but because it is a critical piece of history. Wilfred Riley, mentioned in the letter alongside Thomas Sowell, retweeted my original tweet confirming that he personally received the email, thus verifying its credibility. Internationally famed economist Thomas Sowell was awarded the National Humanities Medal by President George W. Bush for prolific scholarship combining history, economics, and political science. He was awarded the Bradley Prize for Intellectual Achievement. Wilfred Riley, an assistant professor of political science at Kentucky State University, is the author of Hate Crime Hoax, How the Left is Selling a Fake Race War, and has openly challenged and debated members of the alt-right. And he says, I can confirm that the letter in the thread below was sent to me and Tom Sowell. It's really worth reading in a time of widespread panic. This letter, a whopping 2,411 words long and addressed to Professors X, Y, Z, takes issue harshly with the narrative that problems in the black community are caused by whites, noting prominent black voices such as Riley's or famed economist Thomas Sowell's have also objected to the narrative. They are intelligent scholars who reject a narrative that strips black people of agency and systematically externalizes the problems of the black community onto outsiders. Their view is entirely absent from the department and UCB-wide communiques. The writer notes, if we claim that the criminal justice system is white supremacist, why is it that Asian Americans, Indian Americans, and Nigerian Americans are incarcerated at vastly lower rates than white Americans? This is a funny sort of white supremacy. The writer continues, none of this is addressed in your literature. None of this is explained beyond hand-waving and ad hominems. Those are racist dog whistles. The model minority myth is white supremacist. Oh, that's another quote. Those are racist dog whistles. The model minority myth is white supremacist. Only fascists talk about black-on-black crime, ad nauseum. These types of statements do not amount to counter-arguments. They are simply arbitrary offensive classifications intended to silence and oppress discourse. Any serious historian will recognize these for the silencing orthodoxy tactics they are, common to suppressive regimes, doctrines, and religions throughout time and space. They are intended to crush real diversity and permanently exile the culture of robust criticism from our department. Increasingly, we are being called upon to comply and subscribe to BLM's problematic view of history, and the department is being presented as unified on the matter. The writer expresses their fear of stating their opinions publicly. I personally don't dare speak out against the BLM narrative, and with this barrage of alleged unity being mass-produced by the administration, tenured professoriate, and UC administration, corporate America, and the media, the punishment for dissent is a clear danger at a time of widespread economic vulnerability. I am certain that if my name were attached to this email, I would lose my job and all future jobs, even though I believe in and can justify every word I type. Then this. The vast majority of violence visited on the black community is committed by black people. There are virtually no marches for these invisible victims, no public silences, no heartfelt letters from the UC regents, deans, and departmental heads. The message is clear. Black lives only matter when whites take them. Black violence is expected and insoluble, while white violence requires explanation and demands solution. Continuing. Please look into your hearts and see how monstrously bigoted this formulation truly is. No discussion is permitted for non-black victims of black violence who proportionally outnumber black victims of non-black violence. More. The claim that black interracial violence is the product of redlining, slavery, and other injustices is a largely historical claim. It is for historians, therefore, to explain why Japanese internment or the massacre of European Jewry hasn't led to equivalent rates of dysfunction and low SES performance among Japanese and Jewish Americans, respectively. Arab Americans have been viciously demonized since 9/11, as have Chinese Americans more recently. However, both groups outperform white Americans on nearly all SES indices, as do Nigerian Americans who incidentally have black skin. Discussing politics. The patronizing and condescending attitudes of Democrat leaders towards the black community, exemplified by nearly every Biden statement on the black race, all but guarantee a perpetual state of misery, resentment, poverty, and the attendant grievance politics which are simultaneously annihilating American political discourse and black lives. And yet, donating to BLM is bankrolling the election campaigns of men like Mayor Fry, who saw their cities devolve into violence. This is a grotesque capture of a good-faith movement for necessary police reform and of our department by a political party. Even worse, there are virtually no avenues for dissent in academic circles. I refuse to serve the party, and so should you. Invoking Dr. Martin Luther King. MLK would likely be called an Uncle Tom if he spoke on our campus today. We are training leaders who intend explicitly to destroy one of the only true successful ethnically diverse societies in modern history. An acknowledgement. It shouldn't affect the strength of my argument above, but for the record, I write as a person of color. And this. I hope you appreciate the frustration behind this message. I do not support BLM. I do not support the Democrat grievance agenda and the party's uncontested capture of our department. I do not support the party co-opting my race, as Biden recently did in his disturbing interview, claiming that voting Democrat and being black are isomorphic. The complete letter is here. Okay. Wow. Good stuff. Watch. Filmmaker tells Black Lives Matter protests. Oh, yeah, I read this on the other one. About statistics about police shootings gets told to fuck off. Starbucks flips stance on Black Lives Matter apparel at work. Previews new t-shirts. Yeah. So at first they said their employees couldn't wear Black Lives Matter apparel at work, at least not visible. And now they're going to actually produce Black Lives Matter shirts. Fucking cowards. Facebook is limiting PragerU's reach. Sign the petition today. Join the thousands of viewers who value the free exchange of ideas. The Ben Shapiro Show. Tune in to the fastest growing, hardest hitting, most insightful, and savagely irreverent conservative podcast on the web. The Ben Shapiro Show. Here's a bunch of ads again. And last from the Daily Wire is yesterday's. Candace Owens responds to raunchy Dave Chappelle bit at her expense. I haven't read this yet, so might as well. On Friday, conservative commentator and author Candace Owens responded to comedian Dave Chappelle leveling a raunchy bit about the Politico in his latest special. Why is it Politico and not Politica? About the Politica. I guess because we're not speaking Spanish. To every Democrat tweeting me the clip of Dave Chappelle insulting me, I'm not a leftist, Owens posted via Twitter. I have a sense of humor and I think comedians should make fun of people. Dave Chappelle is one of the greatest comedians of all time and I made it into one of his specials. That's power, she added. Cool. In a follow-up tweet, Owens said, "We've arrived too suddenly into a culture where people can't laugh at themselves or want to restrain comedians. I will never be a part of that culture. Dave Chappelle, you are a legend, and I'd love to meet you and challenge you to say any of that to my face," the 31-year-old added. All love. During the special, titled 846, Chappelle says the following about Owens, via the New York Post. "I've seen Candace Owens try to convince white America, don't worry about it. He's a criminal anyway. I don't give a fuck what this did. I don't care what this did. I don't care if he personally kicked Candace Owens in her stanky pussy. I don't know if it stinks, but I imagine it does. If I ever find out, I'll let you know for sure. I'll tell like Azealia Banks. I'll tell." That's not even funny. The title of the special is a reference to the death of George Floyd. How is it a joke? It's not a joke. Anyway, whatever. A reference to the death of George Floyd. 846. Owens made an explosive video earlier this month outlining why she found it troubling that the black community would make a martyr out of a man with a lengthy criminal history. Exactly. It's perfectly reasonable. While the left is cheering Chappelle's jokes about Owens, an openly conservative black woman, they were bashing the funny man not too long ago for his transphobic jokes, most recently in his Netflix special, Sticks and Stones. Yeah? Double standards, triple standards, quadruple standards. It just depends on what you're saying at the time. Continuing on, watch company releases powerful pro-police ad amid anti-police climate. That's very nice. Dave Chappelle. Laura Ingraham is a C word. I hate that word. Twunt. She's a twunt, apparently. According to Dave Chappelle. I've never given a shit what Dave Chappelle says, though. Watch. Seattle mayor says Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone could turn into Summer of Love. That is the stupidest thing ever. Summer of forced love is what it's going to be. Minneapolis City Council unanimously passes resolution to replace police department with community-led public safety system. I read this in the last one. That's probably not going to go well. Bill Gates admits implantable microchip to buy and sell? Okay. Here is the Daily Yahoo for today, Sunday, June 14th. Melania Trump used newfound leverage to redo prenup after election win, New Book says. When the First Lady stayed in New York City after the inauguration, she said it was for Barron's schooling, but there's more to it. Okay, I don't see her divorcing President Trump. Chicago cops caught on camera napping, relaxing in lawmaker's office during protests. They even had the unmitigated gall to make coffee for themselves and to pop popcorn, my popcorn, in my microwave, said Representative Bobby Bush from HuffPost. I wonder when the last time they had slept was. 1 day? 2 days? When was the last time they ate? Fuckers. Not the police. No, they're not. This representative and the people at HuffPost and anybody else who's criticizing this. Artists around the world pay tribute to George Floyd. At the Berlin Wall, a large portrait of Floyd is seen alongside yellow block letters spelling, "I can't breathe," words he repeated before dying as a white Minneapolis police officer knelt on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. The May 25th incident captured on camera, blah, 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 blah. It's not necessary. People just want something to do, and they keep devoting their time to whatever pops up, even if it's not really worth their time. India's Zydus Cadila to make Gilead's potential COVID-19 drug remdesivir. Indian drug maker Zydus Cadila said on Friday it signed a non-exclusive licensing pact with Gilead Sciences, Inc. to manufacture and market antiviral drug remdesivir, the first treatment to show improvement in COVID-19 trials. Zydus, listed as Cadila Healthcare, joins other Indian pharmaceutical companies, blah, 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 and something else, blah, 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 from Reuters. Okay, progress, that's good. Heavy rains batter Cape Town during South African storms. Heavy rains batter Cape Town during South African storms on Thursday, June 11th. Okay. Donald Trump is too small to meet the moment in new Joe Biden attack ad. And Joe Biden would have been big enough to meet the moment. The Biden campaign slams the president's response to anti-racism protests with its latest spot. No matter what you say about him, you can never, ever, ever prove that Joe Biden can do better, because he can't. Featured, unlimited plan, unlimited you, skateboard streaming, hashtag foodie pic posting, bird meme sharing. Whatever you're into, be more into it with Yahoo Mobile. We hook you up with unlimited data, text, and talk on Verizon's 4G LTE network, and hang up on annual contracts and hidden fees. What's hot? Ooh, it's affordable RV insurance quotes with Yahoo Search. Or it's comparing electric rates with Yahoo Search. Trending now, Black Lives Matter, Ashley Mattingly, coronavirus, Dakota Fanning, Rosario Dawson, fire pit covers, Joanna Garcia, home alarm systems, Vanessa Hudgens, OSHA courses. Okie dokie. And lastly, we have the Daily Yahoo from yesterday. NYPD lieutenant apologizes to colleagues for kneeling during protest. Lieutenant Robert Catani told his colleagues he had trouble sleeping after he made a horrible decision to give in to a crowd of protesters' demands. Awesome. Let's read this. A lieutenant with the New York City Police Department who knelt alongside George Floyd protesters apologized for doing so in an email to his colleagues, writing, "The cop in me wants to kick my own ass." In a June 3rd email obtained by NBC New York, the officer, Lieutenant Robert Catani, said his kneeling with protesters goes against every principle and value that I stand for. Katani was among at least 4 officers who submitted to demonstrators' chants of NYPD take a knee. Oh, clever. During a May 31st protest in Lower Manhattan, according to the New York Post, which first reported the email. Straighten your teeth with Smile Direct Club. The police lieutenant told his colleagues in the email that he had trouble sleeping after he made a horrible decision to give in to a crowd of protesters' demands and kneeled alongside several other officers. The symbolic pose gained prominence in 2016 after Colin Kaepernick, then quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, began kneeling during the national anthem before games to protest racial inequality and police brutality against people of color. That would be in 2019, it was nine unarmed black men killed all year. But anyway, in his email, and being unarmed, by the way, does not necessarily mean that you are not dangerous. In his email, Katani said he knelt to appease protesters. The conditions prior to the decision to take a knee were very difficult as we were put center stage with the entire crowd chanting, he wrote. And you folded. Literally, haha. I know I made the wrong decision, he added. We didn't know how the protesters would have reacted if we didn't, and were attempting to reduce any extra violence. He said he thought that by kneeling, maybe one protester/rioter who saw it would later think twice about fighting or hurting a cop. Katani said he spent the first part of his career working to build a reputation as a good cop, and that he threw that all in the garbage on May 31st. I know that it was wrong, and something I will be ashamed and humiliated about for the rest of my life, he wrote. Protesters across the country and around the world have called for greater police accountability since George Floyd, a 46-year-old African-American man, died after a white Minneapolis police officer knelt on his neck for more than 8 minutes on May 25th. The officer, Derek Chauvin, has been fired and charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter. Exactly, so why are we still complaining about this particular thing? I know, yes, okay, it's worth complaining about because it shouldn't have happened, like I've said 100 times before. But this particular situation is being remedied. You are getting justice. You can stop calling for justice for this because you're getting justice for this. And while some change may be called for, such as at least minimizing this whole qualified immunity thing and increasing accountability among police, you gotta be measured in your change. You gotta be moderate. You gotta not do stupid shit like completely removing police forces. 3 other officers involved in the arrest were also fired and faced charges of aiding and abetting murder. Exactly. Katani was not the only officer in New York City to take a knee with protesters. The city's top uniformed officer, Chief of Department Terrence Monahan, joined hands with and knelt alongside protesters in Washington Square Park on June 1st. He drew praise from Mayor Bill de Blasio, who tweeted later that day, "We're lucky to have people like Chief Monahan wearing the uniform. He believes in neighborhood policing with all his heart." But some others, such as the city's public advocate Jumaine Williams, have been critical of the gesture by people who have not been active in the racial justice movement. Oh, yeah? Because it could be seen as just token placating. In reference to recently introduced police reforms in New York, Williams said on AM Joy on MSNBC this week, "It should not have taken 8 or 9 days of unrest on these issues we have been speaking about for such a long time. All of the people who now find it easy to take a knee because of the unrest many years ago were excoriating people like Colin Kaepernick." Yeah, they're hypocritical and cowardly, hypocritical and cowardly. They should still be standing up, excoriating some people. The people who deserve excoriation. Writer Roxane Gay tweeted on June 5th, "I need cops and politicians and white people more broadly to stop kneeling. We don't need you to kneel. We need you to stand up for real, radical, sustained change." Well, you never can satisfy people because you're getting different instructions from all different directions. NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea, meanwhile, in speaking directly to officers on Thursday, said they needed to listen to public sentiment and understand why people are protesting, NBC New York reported. We understand why. I've heard police officials this week talking about how could people feel this way, Shea said. The quicker we realize that, the quicker we get to a solution. 2 NYPD officers have been suspended without pay for conduct during the Floyd protests. One of them, Vincent D'Andrea, was seen in a video shoving a woman to the ground on May 29th at a demonstration in Brooklyn. He was charged Tuesday with misdemeanor assault, criminal mischief, harassment, and menacing. Okie dokie. George Floyd death. Is Trump in trouble for stance on U.S. race relations? The ground is rapidly shifting on a cultural fight that Mr. Trump has relished in the past. BBC. What the fuck do you know, BBC? You're not even here. Yes, I'm sure some of them are here. Whatever. Wall Street week ahead. Investors bet bounce in value stocks will stick. As the U.S. economy begins to emerge from the sharp slowdown during the coronavirus panic, some fund managers have been drawn to value stocks, a sector that underperformed during the recent rally. Where was I? A sector that underperformed during the recent rally. Value stocks, which typically sport lower price-to-earnings valuations, tended to underperform growth stocks. From Reuters. I'm sure that's an interesting read for people who know about that stuff. Jessica Mulroney's reality TV show is dropped after her response to accusations of white privilege. I respect the decision of CTV and have decided to step away from my professional engagements at this time, she said in a statement. I'm going to take this time to reflect, learn, and focus on my family. Because she had a professional disagreement with another person who happened to be black. Prince Charles, Camilla, to mark de Gaulle wartime broadcast with France's Macron. Prince Charles and his wife Camilla will welcome French President Emmanuel Macron next Thursday to mark the 80th anniversary of Charles de Gaulle's radio appeal to his countrymen to resist Nazi occupation. The celebrations will offer a boost to ties between Britain and France. Exclusive. Trump aims to sidestep another arms pact to sell more U.S. drones. Well, we could use the money at this point with all the money you're trying to give away to individuals and small businesses, which I know they need. We could use some more, but the Trump administration plans to reinterpret a Cold War-era arms agreement between 34 nations with the goal of allowing U.S. defense contractors to sell more American-made drones to a wide array of nations, 3 defense industry executives and a U.S. official told Reuters. Join us for Healthcare Sector Takes on COVID-19. You're invited to the next Yahoo Finance Premium webinar taking place tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time / 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Learn how industry leaders are taking on the global panic in the areas of testing, treatment, and vaccine development. Reserve your spot today. That's not what you do to remedy panic. Just saying. What's hot? Oh, it's Yahoo Search. Blah, blah, blah. Black Lives Matter, #1 still. Hillary Burton. Coronavirus, #3 still. Brandon Blackstock. Gloria Steinem. Roof replacement prices. Barbara Fedida. Cara Delevingne. EIN application. African fat flusher. Okay, that's it for today. And if you have gleaned any bit of intelligence or entertainment from this, or if you were just watching it all, subscribe. Be kind, subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.